Good morning. Welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. Happy fall. It is that time of the year now, so fall is upon us. And today we are going to look at the last chapter of the Gospel of John. So it's chapter 21. It's one of my favorite chapters. And but before I dive into my favorite part, we need to take a look at what the beginning. So we find out that in chapter 21, the disciples, they've seen Jesus. They've actually seen Jesus in his resurrection body. And what do? They still decide to go out and go back to fishing, doing their jobs before. And it's this moment in which you realize, even when you've experienced the resurrection, it's hard. It's hard to change your life. I mean, here for 3 years, they've been following Jesus, they've been learning from Jesus, they've been doing the work of Jesus, and now they've experienced his resurrection, and they still don't know what to do with themselves. Once he is gone, once their leader, once their friend is gone, the only thing they can actually think of doing is going back to their old jobs. And so it's this awareness of how vulnerable we are sometimes, how we struggle with actually completely transforming ourselves. It's okay if somebody else does it, but I don't know what to do with that. And even though he's now resurrected, they just go back. So we find them in their boats fishing and not doing a very good job. And then all of a sudden, this man walks up on the shore and says, "Throw your nets over on the other side." And so they do. And then, of course, this loads and loads of fishes are in their nets. And Simon Peter goes, "My Lord is back. Jesus is back." I mean, it's just been a couple of days but here we go. He's back. And it says in here, scripture, that Simon Peter recognized that he was naked. He was naked, and so he jumped into the sea. And yeah, there's this sense of that fishermen would be physically naked, but it's also that naked of, you've caught me. You caught me. I denied you, and now I kind of turned my back on you, and you have seen me fully as I am, in my brokenness, in my inability to follow through. Simon Peter Jesus has seen him naked. And so we have that moment of realizing, and guess what? Jesus still came back to him. Even in his failure to follow through, Jesus still has come back to him. And so what we find then is that as the disciples come to Jesus now, what is he doing? He's making a meal. He's making fish for them. He's got bread there. Of course, so we have the communion going through our head. But and it says then that they have this they share breakfast. So they share a meal together, which is, of course, one of the most intimate things that this community can do together. And so they're doing that. And we have this most beautiful scripture here, but English does not do the job. And so I'm not going to try to take all day, but kind of quickly, there are different kinds of love in Greek. There's many kinds, but today we're going to focus on philos and agape. So philos is like, you're my friend. Agape is a level of love that Jesus shows on and on by serving others, by the depth of compassion that he has for other human beings. Goes beyond just a normal friendship. So we have just, let's be friends, and then I love you to the depth that I'll wash your feet, that I'll die on a cross for you. Agape love. So what we have here is this back and forth, Jesus and Simon Peter. Do you? Yes, I love you. Then feed my sheep. Do you love you? Then, go take care of my lambs. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. And then he says, "Go feed my sheep." And then then Jesus says, "Do you love me?" And Peter's like disappointed, and he's like, "Yes, I love you." And he's like, "Still, go feed my sheep." So what actually happens here is Jesus says, "Do you agape me? Are you willing to go to the ends of the earth for me?" And Peter says, "I philos you. Like, I'm your friend." And so Jesus says, "Go and feed my sheep." All right? And then Jesus says, "Do you agape me?" And Simon Peter says, "I philos you." So again, will you serve me to the ends of the earth? He's like, "I'm still your friend." And Jesus says, "Go take care of my lambs." Then what we find is Jesus says, "Do you philos me?" And that's when Peter's disappointed. Jesus is no longer asking him to love him at the level that Jesus wants. He brings it down to Peter's level. "Do you philos me?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, I philos you." And Jesus says, "You still need to take care of me. You still have something to offer. You still have a ministry to do. You still have love to share. Even if you can't love me at this level, if you can't love others at this level, it doesn't exempt you from still doing what you can do with the love you do have." And it's just this moment of awareness that Jesus is always going to meet us where we are. And Jesus is always going to call us to love others, because that's what we're here to do, is to love one another. And if you know that you can't love that far, that deep, that crazy, that's fine. But it doesn't mean you can't still do what you can do. And so then the Gospel of John kind of ends with, there's so many more stories I could share, but I can't. There's just not enough books in the world to fill all of the wonders that Jesus has done. And I have to agree, because Jesus is still at work today. And so that's how the Gospel of John ends. And it's just a reminder to all of us that whether we can agape God or whether we can find, we got love to share. We got love to put out there in the world. And so thank you for joining me for the Gospel of John. Tomorrow we are going to take the book of Luke called the Acts of the Disciples. And we're going to get to see what happens now that Jesus has returned to the up in heaven. We now get the Holy Spirit. It's time for action. And so we're going to find out all the wonderful things that the disciples started doing once they finally got the courage to go out and do what Jesus has called them to do. So it'll be an exciting week ahead as we